Why are they here? We are sold the lie every day that immigration is a net positive to the UK, and this lie is applicable to all Western countries. Even in this century, we've been told it is just a matter of integration and assimilation, and it's only a matter of time until people who come here, they will be identical to those who have been here for generations. As far back as the 1980s, when this documentary we're covering today was made, the propaganda was not quite as well scripted, and so we're going to see many examples of the quiet part being said out loud and exposing immigration for the cultural scam that it is.
Racism is whenever time individuals or institutions stop other people from living a normal life. For example, education, housing, jobs. That is racialism.
Prejudice plus power. Let's put it in, straight terms.
Prejudice, I suppose, feeds on ignorance. Once we make personal contact, then it becomes easy for us to explain that we are not a burden, we are also contributing to the society, and we have something to offer as well.
This is how the documentary kicks off, and so far it's an okay premise, not the worst framing in the world. So let's see what these people have to offer. And remember the leftist mantra we hear today. Immigrants, for the most part, are not a drain on society, and they offer exceptional skills to jobs we can't get normal British people to do. So surely, this documentary is not going to be about immigrants in low-skilled, badly paid work and then desperate for benefits and cheap government housing, is it? And guys, do the thing the algorithm likes, please. Subscribe, leave a comment, ideally a comment that doesn't get pruned by YouTube. I do see all the comments and those that get flagged for being potentially offensive. And I think too many edgy comments on a video, YouTube is just not going to push the video. So please bear that in mind.
3 views on the effect and meaning of racism. They come from people living in Southwark, a London borough with a black population of over 40,000, nearly 20% of the total. Blacks here will argue they're victims of racism, that they're denied equal rights and opportunities on the basis of colour. They'll point out, for example, that the black or ethnic communities are concentrated in the centre of the borough in Peckham and East Dulwich. Other areas like Bermondsey and former Dockland Rotherhithe, traditional white working-class strongholds in the north and northeast of the borough, and generally upper middle-class Dulwich Village in the south, remain almost exclusively white. These are old established, close-knit white communities, whereas the middle of the borough is not. And this is where blacks are allocated housing, and it's a black population which is very much aware of racial issues.
So the black people are being housed in what would have been the working class white areas before any white flight. And the remaining white areas here, they remain white because they're upper and middle class. So what's the point being made here? That it's racist that there's no black people in the upper class areas? Well, it's very expensive to live there, and government housing is typically in poorer areas. That's obvious, right? So this begs the question, why are all these black people here if they need to be propped up in government housing? And remember, this is the UK. We didn't have a pre-existing huge black population like the United States because of its own slavery period. All these black people in this documentary, the vast majority, are first-generation immigrants. This area of London, 10 years prior to this documentary, was 96% white. Why are they here?
The community as a whole is racist. I mean, the white community as a whole.
White people, I'm sorry to say you, but from the bottom of their heart, they don't like us.
It's stupid because we've got to live together, don't we?
But I've got some coloured people living next door to me and they're absolutely superb. A more beautiful girl you'd never wish to meet.
But I know the hatred is there, segregation is there, all that jazz.
This is just so stereotypically sad to see. Every single non-white person who isn't forced to live here, they are here because it suits them. They chose to be here, and all they do is just complain about the native people. They say that they're hostile, racist, unwelcoming. Well, if that's how you feel, then leave. And then what native Brits they do show, they're the opposite to what the image of the non-whites perceive them to be. They are compassionate and tolerant. Only if they knew that they would be hated and despised regardless of their altruism, they might have changed their tune to what was happening in these multicultural areas that were forming in front of them.
Black people are stereotyped, mugging, criminality.
There is a sort of vicious circle of disadvantage, really, which is difficult for people to break away from. And you're really asking people to be exceptional to be able to break away from that circle.
Stereotypes born out of nothing. There's just no way this has any basis in reality. And then this girl saying you need to be exceptional to break free from your destitute life. Well, that is partly true. And it's the same for very poor white areas in the UK. If you want to break free from a life of poverty, then you need to be exceptional compared to all those around you if you want to escape it. And again, why are all these black people here living in poverty? Why are they here if all they can bring to this country is an increase in crime rate and claiming free money and government housing?
So racism is felt to exist, but how it is perpetuated is much harder to identify. In an effort to alleviate the problems, Southwark councillors set up a race equality committee and a race unit. But even so, there are still difficulties. Deputy Leader Graham Geddes.
The evidence would suggest that black people in the borough have generally a worse service from the housing department in terms of where they live.
And getting a job from employers like the council or from others in or outside the borough is more difficult for blacks. In Southwark, jobs are scarce and unemployment over 20%.
Influx of Africans to an already poor area, unemployment extremely high, and the government housing is already of a substandard. If I was playing one of those city building games and I wanted to create a perpetual ghetto, this is the exact conditions I would implement to create it. However, unlike these city builder games, we can't get bored and wipe it off the map with a fire tornado. We, as a nation, are forced to live with the far-reaching consequences of this, and we have the privilege to pay for it as well.
Now, when I talk about unemployment, at the end of that scale, you always find it's black unemployment, it's really the eyes.
You do hear about incidences where coloured people, Asian people go for jobs and they're not accepted because they are Asian or coloured. And that same job for someone maybe not as experienced or educated is taken.
White.
Yeah, the white person is not accepted.
I think there are a lot of evidence to prove that if those people with qualification, even notified much harder or have higher qualification to compete with the white counterpart in terms of job.
How the pendulum has swung. Now, if this was the case, the whites were preferred over minorities in jobs. Even if they were slightly less qualified, I admit, I have zero problem with this. And that's nepotism, you say? Well, I know it is, and that's the point. A nation is a people, and you should put your people first. Now, I'm not saying we should go full Soviet Union, where we have shoemakers be promoted to run nuclear power plants, but if you are natively British, living in Britain, running a British company, why would you not hire, if given the chance, a native person over a non-native person? And now, 40 years since this documentary, this mentality of browbeating the native people has led to the complete opposite situation. Whites being discriminated in favour of hiring non-whites.
It's at school that black and white really get together for the first time. Is this where racism begins, as many teachers believe?
The children know that we won't tolerate racism as far as we can. But out of school, there's obviously a lot of racism, and we just have to do our best to put over our angle to the children.
Diana Kennedy, acting headmistress of Brunswick Park Junior School. London schools have been asked to take positive action to help their children avoid racism. The Education Authority, like Southwark Council, felt the problem to be so serious and so complex that it must be watched for in every aspect of school life, from textbooks to playtime. There is now great emphasis on anti-racist teaching.
This is just amazing to see, right? As far back as the 80s, your tax money, which when you realise some of it goes towards schools, you're probably thinking that's okay. That's a good thing. At least the money is going towards something important. And then you peer inside, into the schools, and your money is being spent on anti-racism propaganda, and the children's time, instead of actually learning, they're just being brainwashed.
We do try and pick up any points that are made in any books that are read. We have got rid of the books and the texts that are obviously racist, but there are times when a writer has used words that we want to say to the children, this is the way words have been used, we don't use them now, and you know why we don't, and perhaps explain again why we don't like certain words being used or certain ways of using phrases.
This is the foundation for the woke propaganda your children have been subjected to now. If I was being generous, I would say at the time they may have had a good intention to try alleviate differences, but that's not the case. This mentality has only had the propaganda dial be turned up with each passing year, and now British children can't even have the flag of their own nation be displayed at their school out of fear of it being perceived to be racist. This is why there's no centrist position anymore. What this documentary is showing in the 80s may appear to be a moderate stance in 2025, but where does this stance eventually lead? It leads to school kids being forced to bend the knee to Black Lives Matter. The slippery slope is very real.
Another Brunswick Park teacher, Jill Webster.
We also try to deal with it more positively in the curriculum by trying to stress some of the differences that may be between races, but the similarities that there are also between people. And at the same time making them aware of the sort of diverse elements from which they come, so that they have some sort of respect for the different elements rather than regarding them as negative.
So one part of the system is taking steps towards creating a more equal society. But to work, this must be carried to every corner of life outside. But still, teachers argue that theirs is a positive step in the right direction. Another step, say blacks, would be the appointment of more black teachers. In many London schools, there are none at all. So anti-racist teaching is carried out mainly by whites.
Remember, very important point here, it's not the similarities that make us the same. It's the differences that make us different. This is the fundamental truth that is being ignored, and quite simply, it's the reason we have allowed ourselves to slip into this multicultural mess. And then they claim we need more black teachers to teach non-white children, so we need Africans to teach Africans. Then why not do it in Africa? Why are they here?
We've got a mixed bunch of kids from all sorts of different walks of life and from all sorts of different cultures, and I think in that respect we're perhaps a bit luckier than many other schools. But I think other schools where there isn't such a mix don't always learn very much about each other and therefore don't acquire the same sort of respect.
This is just a load of bullshit. Schools that are majority white are worse because they don't learn about each other? Well, that's because they're busy learning about real things and not just critical race theory propaganda.
The benefits of anti-racist teaching will only bear fruit in the future. But what of the present? It is bleak, say the black community, discrimination is all around us. In vital areas like employment, we often end up with the worst jobs or no jobs at all. Southwark's mayor during 1983 and 1984, Sam King.
When the young black or anybody is unemployed, you are bitter. And especially if you are not equipped for the community, you're a loser, and they know that. You do not have to tell them. Most of the young unemployed youth, black, minority, and host nation are bitter.
We've maybe adapted a bit to actually living with nothing, but we've got children now, and we don't want our children to have the same rough living where you're literally a second-class citizen.
And that's true. And during this time there was a lot of economic unrest with the the foundation of the nation going through Margaret Thatcher's economic revolution. And I'm not going into whether this was a good or a bad thing today, but during this shift, there was a lot of unemployment in poorer working class communities. So if this is the economic situation at the time, it begs the question, why are all these low-skilled immigrants here? And this guy at the end, he does make a good point, and I do not personally blame him for wanting to come here for opportunity and to try to give his children more than he had. But he and his family are a victim to immigration. And I get it, and I could be more empathetic to his situation. But this is not our problem, and he and his family should not be here.
These strong feelings of constant rejection by what's seen as a white system lead to hopelessness and anger, and a feeling that it isn't even worth trying.
It's a white system because it's a system that has been built by whites for whites. Why is this inherently a bad thing? Did you know the Japanese built a societal system for the Japanese? I mean, what a disgrace. How dare they?
But it is possible to succeed, like the Capital News Agency, established with council help. It's run by Marjorie Francis and Carol Bright.
We operate on the basis that we are journalists. We've never seen colour as a handicap. I see it as a gift. We don't crawl into Fleet Street apologetically, and we go into Fleet Street and we talk to people one-to-one as one journalist to another. That's how we approach all the news desk. So it has never handicapped us in other ways. In fact, we've used it to our advantage, being women from ethnic communities. Some people would think would go against us, but we have used that to our advantage, being different. We're not run-of-the-mill journalists. If you go to Fleet Street, you will see people that all look the same, that all write the same, that all think the same, that drink in the same pubs. We're different, and we have used that to our advantage, and it's worked. But it's no good just being different. You have to be good. We're different and good.
Well, that's really, really nice. This woman succeeded within this white system, and so what do? Will they do everything in their power to now destroy that system? Thank you for your contributions. I really, really appreciate that.
Most blacks tell a different story. They accuse the council of discrimination. What is it that brings this charge against an avowed equal opportunities employer who provides so many local jobs? Graham Geddes has some reasons why.
I think in a large organisation like a local authority, you will find at the present time most people will not see themselves as being racist, and will think that because they are not individually racist, the organisation of which they collectively make up is not itself racist. I think the evidence is that in terms of our equal opportunities employment policies, or perhaps their lack of development at the present time, how many blacks do we have in top management jobs, for example, there is evidence to suggest that the institution acts to prevent the development of racial equality in employment policies.
Now, I think in most people's minds, you hear the expressions of systemic racism, systematic structures of privilege, and all that cultural Marxist babble. This is not a new thing born out of Gamergate or social justice warrior feminists that we laughed at in 2013. This pervasive disease was already seeping into every crevice of every institution, and in time it would be weaponized against the native people in favour of progressive race-based ideology.
Because the black communities look to the local authority for support and help, the attitudes of the council really matter to them. The problem is that no council can achieve miracles alone or that quickly. Meanwhile, the ethnic community's grievances grow. Take housing. Southwark controls nearly 70% of all the properties in the borough, so it's in a unique position to influence where people live. The accommodation on offer ranges from former GLC estates to those it built itself in the 60s and 70s. Nearly a third of its properties are classified as hard to let. Nearly all of these are in the areas with the highest concentration of ethnic groups, Peckham and East Dulwich.
Again, no one is forcing anyone to live anywhere. I thought these highly skilled immigrants would bring their fabulous wealth with them, and they can live wherever they want and contribute to our society like everybody else. But in fact, they're pleading to a local council of a foreign country to give them better, cheap housing. If they don't like it, they can leave. But they don't leave. So why are they here?
One estate, North Peckham, has 1,010 flats. Here, 30% of the tenants are black. The council controls housing allocations, and many blacks feel there's a deliberate policy of placing members of ethnic groups in unpopular, run-down estates. Tony Ritchie, one-time chair of Southwark's Housing Committee, now leader of the council.
You know, I don't want to be rude in answer to a question. I think if you're asking me, do we deliberately have a policy of discriminating, I think it's a daft question, because I don't believe that anybody would seriously say that a Labour council with a track record of Southwark would do that. We don't do it. We would abhor anybody even suggesting that we do it. There are problems. The problems are within our allocations policies, and that's what we need to be tackling. We place, in my opinion, too much weighting to residential qualification, to periods of time on the waiting list, and not enough on the basis of housing need. Allocations in a borough like Southwark with 63,000 properties, many of them in areas like we are now, in the semi-high-rise area, high-density living, are not particularly desirable. Allocations in those areas is a very, very intricate problem. And we need to get it right. We can't go back and tackle it and alter the whole system again in another 12 months' time. So we have spent time looking at getting that problem right.
Even if they were doing this on purpose, allocating certain groups into undesirable areas, I don't care. To me, that's not the problem. The problem is well beyond this and far, far deeper.
Altering the allocation system may make it more fair, but there are those like Councillor Orban Graham who believe there's a deeper problem.
I hear some allocators saying we do not discriminate and we give black people a fair deal, and this is what they ask for. But my question to an allocator is, would you have offered a black person a flat somewhere in Dulwich? And the reason why sometimes black people tend to say, oh well, I'll take that, is because what they're offered, and they know no matter what happens, they're not going to be offered anything else.
How ungrateful. You come here with nothing, to a country you don't belong, and the government is literally giving you a place to live, and you think you deserve more.
Southwark isn't the only borough accused of putting its ethnic population in the worst housing. The recent report by the Commission for Racial Equality on Housing in Hackney came to the same conclusions. Conclusions which have now been generally accepted as true for all London boroughs. But accepting is one thing. Doing something about it is another.
Good point. What can we do about the fact that waves of poor non-whites are claiming government housing? How about we send them all away and it's no longer our problem? Clearly, if you come to this country and can't even afford to live, then why are you here?
Southwark officials deny overt racism, but nonetheless discrimination can exist. In the face of this, the black community have come to believe the British people will never really accept us. We're just too different. It's not just colour, but culture that is the stumbling block. Whites are mystified and unsettled by the ethnic community's reluctance to abandon their languages, customs and traditions. The blacks reply, we need to retain them. They're part of what we are.
Hey guys, don't worry, they will integrate. Once off the boat, it'll just be a matter of time until they're just like us. Even in this decade, political parties talk about this being just a problem with integration. But here the quiet part is being said out loud, and as far back as the 80s, it's very clear that they don't want to integrate, they don't want to give up their customs, tradition and culture. And why would they? I would not expect them to give it up. It's who they are. That's why integration is fundamentally a false premise. You're asking people and communities, because remember, we're not dealing with a couple of individuals, but entire communities to forget who they are and be a part of a culture and a people whom they can never aspire to be.
the Vietnamese, the Turks, the Asians, and the Afro-Caribbeans all celebrate and maintain their cultures in different ways. Many are difficult for whites to understand. But, say the ethnic communities, you could at least try. You can learn from us just as there's much we have to learn from you.
How about no? You can take your cultural norms and practices and go away. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't care about your shitty food. We have the recipes. We don't need you opening up another kebab shop.
For them, the retention of their culture in Britain is vital.
We are more Pakistani than we are English. We don't look English. We look Pakistani. And if we just try and be English, we won't be accepted into the English society and we won't be accepted by our own people. So we want to learn about our own culture and then teach it to the English people, to share it.
If we don't, learn about ourselves and teach other people, we're going to be left very confused. Because we won't know where to turn. We won't really be accepted by the English society or the black society. We'd just be left in the middle.
They are completely right. And these girls too are victims of immigration. They're in a foreign land with a very confused message of who they are and who they ought to become. It's not their fault, but that doesn't mean it should be our problem. That's why remigration is the only solution to this.
But that's the position in which most Afro-Caribbeans find themselves. Their traditions are close to British ones, but they feel rejected by its society. Their response is to form black-only groups. It's a recognition of the fact, they say, that since no one else will do it, they must help themselves. But to do this, they need money and premises. The view of Unity, which meets in a run-down building in Peckham High Street, is that they look to the council to provide both.
And again, communities of foreigners who don't integrate because integration is a myth. And they have no money to support themselves, so they turn to this foreign government, our government, that they do not respect, and they beg for resources so they can separate from wider society even more. If this is their end goal, I think I'm starting to understand the answer to my question. Are they here because they get a bunch of free stuff?
It's Dr. Zayas. We want vote now. More Gibbs for Australopithecus people. We had long boat ride. Very dangerous. Need Gibbs.
Because at this present time, we haven't got any funding to do anything at this stage. But we've put proposals for things that we'd love to do to the council, but we haven't got any direct reaction or positive reaction at this present moment.
Now we're in a position where the membership put demands upon us that really truly we will have to make decisions soon on how we're going to satisfy our membership, or we need some form of commitment from the council to actually give the membership a reply to their demands.
Unity is an example of how the Afro-Caribbean community is trying to meet its own needs. The proliferation of similar groups set up to help specific problems of all the ethnic communities is a testament to the alienation they all feel.
They're so alienated that groups need to solely exist and be funded by the council to provide them needs to these non-native groups because they can't do it themselves or support themselves. So what gives you the right to turn up yesterday and to claim all these resources? This attitude of tolerating this has led to where we are today, where we pay billions each year, not just towards legal immigrants, but now to illegals who turn up literally on boats. It's just a disgrace.
The resources are very limited, and we are quite disappointed by the lack of awareness on the part of institutions, authorities to even identify our needs rather than, and there isn't any attempt to develop the resources according to our needs.
So what does Southwark Council, with its race unit and its race equality committee, think it can achieve in the face of beliefs like, we're second-class citizens, it's not our problem, we're not wanted here? This is a social crisis with no clear-cut answers. Chair of the Race Committee, Councillor Madden Kalia.
The specific aims of the Race Equality Committee are that we should remove the discrepancy which existed previously, that the ethnic minorities were not giving their rightful share of the facilities and amenities which are offered by the council.
So with the Race and Equality Commissions, all this stuff introduced to tackle these foundational issues they claim to be perpetuated by these white systems. Was it successful? Well, with the power of hindsight, as this documentary is over 40 years old, well guess what? Everything is worse. These areas like Peckham have some of the worst gang violence in the country. All these good intention policies, they were mere catalysts to creating environments for foreign criminal gangs. It's a fantastic effort by the council and the wider government to self-inflict such a cultural wound on yourself. It is beyond impressive. And so again, to those still watching this video, why are these people here? Why do they continue to come here if this is how they live? And why do we, as a nation, financially support this? Not only is the slippery slope real, the slope is several decades old, and there's no end in sight. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little historical insight. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time.